The other day, I started answering a couple questions that were posed to me by my community on Facebook. It started when I asked, what's something you never quite understood about sales or salespeople that you would like to know? I told them to be nice. So they were, and they asked some good questions. A couple of them came back with the concept of no, when sales reps need to learn to give up, and I answered that question. But there's another thought that stood out, and I want to make sure that I answered it. And it came from my friend Mark Levine, and he said, I understand why it happens, and it still annoys me. Salespeople who talk too much and listen too little. I want to talk about that. That one, I'm telling you, it annoys a lot of people. Listen to why this happens and what I recommend you do to fix it. This episode is brought to you in part by TSE Certified Sales Training Program. It's a program designed to help new and struggling sellers improve and take their skills to a whole new level. Get access to the first 2 modules absolutely free. Find more information at thesalesevangelist.com/free course. This episode is also brought to you in part by Sales Success Summit. This year's Sales Success Summit is held in Austin, Texas from October 14th through the 15th. Learn from the top 1%ers in sales what makes them succeed and how you can improve. Sign up today at top1summit.com. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And on this episode, as you heard in the teaser, I'm going to tackle another question or another thought that was proposed to me by my Facebook community. It's around talking. As sales reps, you got to admit, we like to talk. Something happened years ago or somehow where we think that if we talk a lot, we are going to persuade people to make purchases. It's in the act of convincing. If we talk more, they're going to hear us more, and they're going to believe us more, and naturally, they're going to say yes more. That's the idea. Is it true? Absolutely not. What people don't realize is that the great salespeople talk less. And I'm sure you've heard the little adage that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and obviously you need to listen twice as much as you talk. Those salespeople who it seems like they talk a lot who are really, really good, in actuality, what they're doing when they do talk is that they're more than likely asking questions that stimulate the buyer to question their perspective. So let's say, for instance, go back to what we were talking about on Monday. If somebody has a car and they're spending $300 a week on that car to fix it on average over the course of the year, you can ask questions that would help them to realize that there is a problem. Maybe you ask them how much you spend per year on your vehicle. Then you may break it down per month and then per week. Maybe they'll start to realize, holy moly, I'm spending $1,200 on average over the course of the year. And that's ridiculous. You should be driving a Maserati at that expense. And then ask them, well, why are you spending that much? That may be a tough question to ask because you might think they might get offended. You have to ask these questions. The good sales reps typically do. The buyer will then go into saying, well, I don't know. Maybe I should change that. Then they might ask another question. If I could show you a way that you can spend quarter of that per month and still have money to save, as well as have a reliable vehicle, would you be open to learning more about that? The buyer more than likely would say, yeah, I'm open to learning about that. Now the conversation begins. But you have to ask questions. This person said nothing at all about features or benefits, said nothing about the radio, said nothing about this car seat, that it was standard, that it was manual, or that it was automatic, that it had blue spoiler or red fins. They said nothing about that. They just had a conversation. And through questions, you can help someone persuade themselves to make a decision. Intuitively, we might know this as a sales rep, but still yet we don't do it. Listen to this. You get into a situation, you're sitting down with the buyer, and for some reason, it gets quiet and it feels awkward. It feels weird. Like, what are they thinking? And they're probably thinking, what are you thinking? And just in our society, or maybe just human beings, we don't like it to be quiet. It feels wrong, especially when you're in a sales meeting. There should be some kind of conversation, some kind of discussion. Also going on in our mind, if it's in a sales meeting and they're quiet, we're thinking that they're thinking bad. that they're probably trying to say this meeting is boring, or they're probably saying, well, I don't have the money for it, or I am not entertained. So thus, as a seller, we begin to entertain, or we begin to speak to make it less boring or less awkward. Again, usually this is not the case. And if it is awkward, it's because you're probably not asking the right questions. So let's talk about this. There's a Harvard study. It found that talking about ourselves triggers the same sensation of pleasure in the brain as food or money. It goes on to say in several tests, the neuroscientists offered volunteers money if they chose to answer questions about other people rather than themselves. Despite the financial incentive, volunteers willingly gave up between 17 and 25% of their potential earnings. I find that fascinating, and I think it's because we're more comfortable talking about ourselves. It's something that we're confident in, so that's what I will continue on. Tie in also with the fact that it is awkward to have the silence. So the conclusion that I'm getting to is that sales rep, like Mark says, love to talk about themselves because of a lack of preparation for meetings. If they were prepared for meetings, they would ask or get to understand the situation more, or understand the buyer, or understand their company. And if they understood those things, they would be confident in the customer, or in the customer's company, or in the customer's challenge, and they can ask appropriate questions that would help the buyer to be in a thoughtful, engaging discussion that will lead them down the path of making a decision that's in their favor. But again, I'm not going to take the time to prepare. So when I go into the meeting, I'm going to wing it. And I'm going to go back to what I feel is most comfortable talking about myself and my company. And I don't like the awkwardness. I don't want them to be quiet. I don't want them to think about kicking me out. I don't want them to say no. I don't want them to get up and say they have to do something else. So if I keep the meeting going and just keeping on, then maybe something will happen. And maybe they'll say yes. Or maybe they'll say, let's talk and give me a false hope and say, let's schedule something for another day. And then nothing comes from it. But that's the reality of the situation. Prepare for your meetings. When it's all said and done, write down some thought-provoking questions, things that will challenge the prospect's way of thinking. If you feel awkward asking a question, if you feel like squeamish about it, you probably should be asking it. Maybe you can tweak the way that you're saying it or thinking it, but you should ask that question because it's on your mind. If you're thinking it, there's a reason. Bring it up. If the prospect has a booger in their nose, don't necessarily bring that up and embarrass them. You can probably do it subliminally by just rubbing your nose. Maybe they'll get the point. But other than that, if you feel that there's a problem, if you feel that there's something that they're skirting around, if they don't want to talk about the real issue, be upfront and say, you know what, is it okay if I ask a question without you getting upset? I feel that you're skirting around the real problem here, Dave. The problem is you fill in the blank with what the problem could be. The problem is you're making excuses about your sales. The problem is you're doing the same thing for the past 15 years and you're afraid of change. Once you can get down to nitty-gritty like that, you can have some really thought-provoking conversation. Things will happen. Either it will progress towards a real conclusion or conversion, or maybe they will realize that they don't want to change and they won't drag you along for the next 6 months and they'll just say no. And then you just leave them and maybe you follow up in months as we talked about on Monday. Perhaps it's just not the right timing for them. But to go back to Mark's point, yeah, salespeople just need to talk less. We have some episodes, and I'm going to link back to one of them where we talk about several of them, where we address the idea of tough questions and questions you could ask in your sales meeting. And I want you guys to be able to prepare for your meetings more, come with some questions beforehand, study about the customer, study about their company, learn about some of the potential problems they could be facing and how you solve those for other people, and make sure you can have thought-provoking discussion that focus on them. Hope this gave some insights to you. Hope it gives you some ideas as you're going out today. I've been in your same situation. I know the challenges. I know the difficulty, and I want to help you. I want you guys to find more ideal customers. I want you to have more meaningful conversation each and every single day. I want you to be able to close more deals. But most importantly, I want to challenge you to go out and do big things. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the episode today as much as I did. And if so, I ask that you go ahead and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't subscribed as of yet, subscribe. If you listen to this on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever, just hit subscribe. I know you're going to continue to love our show. Our show today was produced by myself and the Sales Podcast Network. It was edited and mixed together by the one and only Jersh Nobel. Our show note today was created by Rael. Our artworks were created by Dasan. Our guest correspondent is May Mar. Our podcast production manager is Mrs. Shannon Rasmussen. You can find audio credits to this and all of our episodes in the show notes. And as always, I am your host, your coach, your mentor, your guide down the sales journey, Mr. Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. Sales Podcast Network.